Hello there. Come in. Take the weight off. Welcome to Homemade Audiobooks, the coziest corner of YouTube, a nest where you can settle down, turn the lights low, shut your peepers, and listen in to my homemade narrations of some of my favourite ever tales. These will be slightly over-the-top readings, with silly voices, accents aplenty, and a whole myriad of sound effects, all intended to give you the most immersive experience possible. What's better than reading? Well, listening to someone read to you. If you're enjoying my creations, then head over to Patreon to support my efforts. It would mean ever so much. For now, though, let's head off to 1960s New York and the Gothic splendour of the Branford Building. It's time for Ira Levin's legendary horror yarn, Rosemary's Baby. Rosemary's Baby, written by Ira Levin, read by Homemade Audiobooks. Part 1, Chapter 3. And then Rosemary was busy and happy. She bought and hung curtains, found a Victorian glass lamp for the living room, hung pots and pans on the kitchen wall. One day she realised that the 4 boards in the hall closet were shelves fitting across to sit on wood cleats on the side walls. She covered them with gingham contact paper and, when Guy came home, showed him a neatly filled linen closet. She found a supermarket on 6th Avenue and a Chinese laundry on 55th Street for the sheets and Guy's shirts. Guy was busy too, away every day like other women's husbands. With Labour Day past, his vocal coach was back in town. Guy worked with him each morning and auditioned for plays and commercials most afternoons. At breakfast he was touchy reading the theatrical page. Everyone else was out of town with Skyscraper or Drat the Cat or The Impossible Years or Hot September. Only he was in New York with Residuals from Anniston. But Rosemary knew that very soon he'd get something good, and quietly she set his coffee before him and quietly took for herself the newspaper's other section. The nursery was, for the time being, a den with off-white walls and the furniture from the old apartment. The white and yellow wallpaper would come later, clean and fresh. Rosemary had a sample of it lying ready in Picasso's, along with a Saks ad showing the crib and bureau. She wrote to her brother Brian to share her happiness. No one else in the family would have welcomed it. They were all hostile now, parents, brothers, sisters, not forgiving her for A, marrying a Protestant, B, marrying in only a civil ceremony, and C, having a mother-in-law who had had 2 divorces and was married now to a Jew up in Canada. She made Guy chicken merengue and vitello tonato, baked a mocha-layer cake and a jarful of butter cookies. They heard Minnie Castavet before they met her, heard her through their bedroom wall, shouting in a hoarse Midwestern bray.
"Roman, come to bed. It's 11:20.
And 5 minutes later,
"Roman, bring me in some root beer when you come."
"I didn't know they were still making Maren Parkell movies," Guy said, and Rosemary laughed uncertainly. She was 9 years younger than Guy, and some of his references lacked clear meaning for her. They met the Goulds in 7F, a pleasant elderly couple, and the German-accented Bruns and their son Walter in 7C. They smiled and nodded in the hall to the Kelloggs, 7G, Mr. Stein, 7H, and the Messrs. Debin and Devore, 7B. Rosemary learned everyone's name immediately, from doorbells and from face-up mail on doormats, which she had no qualms about reading. The Caps in 7D, unseen and with no mail, were apparently still away for the summer, and the Castavets in 7A heard,
"Roman, where's Terry?"
but unseen, were either recluses or comers and goers at odd hours. Their door was opposite the elevator, their doormat supremely readable. They got airmail letters from a surprising variety of places: Haywick, Scotland; Langeac, France; Victoria, Brazil; Cessnock, Australia. They subscribed to both Life and Look. No sign at all did Rosemary and Guy see of the Trench sisters, Adrian Marcato, Keith Kennedy, Pearl Ames, or their latter-day equivalents. Dubin and Devore were homosexuals. Everyone else seemed entirely commonplace. Almost every night the Midwestern bray could be heard from the apartment which Rosemary and Guy came to realise had originally been the bigger front part of their own.
But it's impossible to be 100% sure,
the woman argued, and,
if you want my opinion, we shouldn't tell her at all. That's my opinion.
One Saturday night the Castavets had a party, with a dozen or so people talking and singing. Guy fell asleep easily, but Rosemary lay awake until after 2, hearing flat, unmusical singing and a flute or clarinet that piped along beside it. The only time Rosemary remembered Hutch's misgivings and was made uneasy by them was when she went down to the basement every 4th day or so to do the laundry. The service elevator was in itself unsettling, small, unmanned, and given to sudden creaks and tremors, and the basement was an eerie place of once whitewashed brick passageways where footfalls whispered distantly and unseen doors thudded closed, where cast-off refrigerators faced the wall under glary bulbs in wire cages. It was here, Rosemary would remember, that a dead baby wrapped in newspaper had not so long ago been found. Whose baby had it been? And how had it died? Who had found it? Had the person who left it been caught and punished? She thought of going to the library and reading the story in old newspapers, as Hutch had done, but that would have made it more real, more dreadful than it already was. To know the spot where the baby had lain, to have perhaps to walk past it on the way to the laundry room, and again on the way back to the elevator, would have been unbearable. Partial ignorance, she decided, was partial bliss. Damn Hutch and his good intentions. The laundry room would have done nicely in a prison. Steamy brick walls, more bulbs in cages, and scores of deep double sinks in iron mesh cubicles. There were coin-operated washers and dryers, and in most of the padlocked cubicles, privately owned machines. Rosemary came down on weekends or after 5. Earlier on weekdays, a bevy of Negro laundresses ironed and gossiped and had abruptly fallen silent at her one unknowing intrusion. She had smiled all around and tried to be invisible, but they hadn't spoken another word, and she had felt self-conscious, clumsy, and Negro oppressing. One afternoon, when she and Guy had been in the Bramford a little over 2 weeks, Rosemary was sitting in the laundry room at 5:15, reading the New Yorker and waiting to add softener to the rinse water, when a girl of her own age came in, a dark-haired, cameo-faced girl who, Rosemary realised with a start, was Anna Maria Alberghetti. She was wearing white sandals, black shorts, and an apricot silk blouse, and was carrying a yellow plastic laundry basket. Nodding at Rosemary and then not looking at her, she went to one of the washers, opened it, and began feeding dirty clothes into it. Anna Maria Alberghetti, as far as Rosemary knew, did not live at the Bramford, but she could well have been visiting someone and helping out with the chores. A closer look, though, told Rosemary that she was mistaken. This girl's nose was too long and sharp, and there were other less definable differences of expression and carriage. The resemblance, however, was a remarkable one, and suddenly Rosemary found the girl looking at her with an embarrassed, questioning smile, the washer beside her closed and filling. "Oh, I'm sorry," Rosemary said. I thought you were Anna Maria Alberghetti, so I've been staring at you. I'm sorry." The girl blushed and smiled and looked at the floor a few feet to her side. "Oh, that happens a lot," she said. "You don't have to apologize. People have been thinking I'm Anna Maria since I was, just a kid, when she first started out in Here Comes the Groom." She looked at Rosemary, still blushing but no longer smiling. "I don't see a resemblance at all," she said. "I'm of Italian parentage like she is, but no physical resemblance." "There's a very strong one," Rosemary said. "I guess there is," the girl said. "Everyone's always telling me. I don't see it, though. I wish I did, believe me." "Do you know her?" Rosemary asked. "No." "The way you said Anna Maria, I thought..." "Oh, no, I just call her that. I guess from talking about her so much with everyone." She wiped her hand on her shorts and stepped forward, holding it out and smiling. "I'm Terry Gianafrio," she said, "and I can't spell it, so don't you try." Rosemary smiled and shook hands. "I'm Rosemary Woodhouse," she said. "We're new tenants here. Have you been here long?" Oh, I'm not a tenant at all, the girl said. I'm just staying with Mr. and Mrs. Castavet up on the 7th floor. I'm their guest, sort of, since June. Oh, you know them? No, Rosemary said, smiling. But our apartment is right behind theirs and used to be the back part of it. Oh, for goodness sake, the girl said. You're the party that took the old lady's appointment. The old lady that died. Gardenia. That's right. Oh, she was a good friend of the Castavets. She used to grow herbs and things and bring them in for Mrs. Castavet to cook with. Rosemary nodded. When we first looked at the apartment, she said, one room was full of plants. And now that she's dead, Terry said, Mrs. Castavet's got a miniature greenhouse in the kitchen and grows things herself. Excuse me, I have to put softener in, Rosemary said. She got up and got the bottle from the laundry bag on the washer. Do you know who you look like? Terry asked her, and Rosemary, unscrewing the cap, said, No, who? Piper Laurie. Rosemary laughed. Oh no, she said. It's funny you're saying that because my husband used to date Piper Laurie before she got married. No kidding, in Hollywood? No, here. Rosemary poured a capful of the softener. Terry opened the washer door and Rosemary thanked her and tossed the softener in. Is he an actor, your husband? Terry asked. Rosemary nodded complacently, capping the bottle. No kidding. What's his name? Guy Woodhouse, Rosemary said. He was in Luther and Nobody Loves an Albatross, and he does a lot of work in television. Gee, I watch TV all day long, Terry said. I'll bet I've seen him somewhere. Glass crashed somewhere in the basement, a bottle smashing or a window pane. Yow! Terry said. Rosemary hunched her shoulders and looked uneasily towards the laundry room's doorway. I hate this basement, she said. Me too, Terry said. I'm glad you're here. If I was alone now, I'd be scared stiff. Delivery boy probably dropped a bottle, Rosemary said. Terry said, Listen, we could come down here together regular. Your door's by the service elevator, isn't it? I could ring your bell and we could come down together. We could call each other first on the house phone. That would be great, Rosemary said. I hate coming down here alone. Terry laughed happily, seemed to seek words, and then, still laughing, said, I got a good luck charm that'll maybe do for the both of us. She pulled away the collar of her blouse, drew out a silver neck chain, and showed Rosemary on the end of it a silver filigree ball a little less than an inch in diameter. Oh, that's beautiful, Rosemary said. Isn't it? Terry said. Mrs. Castavet gave it to me the day before yesterday. It's 300 years old. She grew the stuff inside it in that little greenhouse. It's good luck, or anyway it's supposed to be. Rosemary looked more closely at the charm Terry held out between thumb and fingertip. It was filled with a greenish-brown, spongy substance that pressed out against the silver openwork. A bitter smell made Rosemary draw back. Terry laughed again. I'm not mad about the smell either, she said. I hope it works. It's a beautiful charm, Rosemary said. I've never seen anything like it. It's European, Terry said. She leaned a hip against a washer and admired the ball, turning it one way and another. The Castavets are the most wonderful people in the world, bar none, she said. They picked me up off the sidewalk, and I mean that literally. I conked out on 8th Avenue, and they brought me here and adopted me like a mother and father. Or, well, like a grandmother and a grandfather, I guess. You were sick? Rosemary asked. That's putting it mildly, Terry said. I was starving and on dope and doing a lot of other things that I'm so ashamed of I could throw up just thinking about them. And Mr. and Mrs. Castavet completely rehabilitated me. They got me off the H, the dope, and got food into me and clean clothes on me. And now nothing is too good for me as far as they're concerned. They give me all kinds of health food and vitamins. They even have a doctor come give me regular checkups. It's because they're childless. I'm like the daughter they never had, you know? Rosemary nodded. I thought at first that maybe they had some kind of ulterior motive, Terry said. Maybe some kind of sex thing they would want me to do, or he would want, or she. But they've really been like real grandparents. Nothing like that. They're going to put me through secretarial school in a little while, and later on I'm going to pay him back. I only had 3 years of high school, but there's a way of making it up. She dropped the filigree ball back into her blouse. Rosemary said, It's nice to know there are people like that when you hear so much about apathy and people who are afraid of getting involved. There aren't many like Mr. and Mrs. Castavet, Terry said. I would be dead now if it wasn't for them. That's an absolute fact. Dead or in jail. You don't have any family that could have helped you?
Brother in the Navy. The less said about him, the better.
Rosemary transferred her finished wash to a dryer and waited with Terry for hers to be done. They spoke of Guy's occasional role on Another World.
Sure, I remember. You married to him?
The Bramfords' past, of which Terry knew nothing, and the coming visit to New York of Pope Paul. Terry was, like Rosemary, Catholic, but no longer observing. She was anxious, though, to get a ticket to the papal mass to be celebrated at Yankee Stadium. When her wash was done and drying, the two girls walked together to the service elevator and rode to the 7th floor. Rosemary invited Terry in to see the apartment, but Terry asked if she could take a rain check. The Castavets ate at 6, and she didn't like to be late. She said she would call Rosemary on the house phone later in the evening so they could go down together to pick up their dry laundry. Guy was home, eating a bag of Fritos and watching a Grace Kelly movie. "I'm sure must be clean clothes," he said. Rosemary told him about Terry and the Castavets, and that Terry had remembered him from another world. He made light of it, but it pleased him. He was depressed by the likelihood that an actor named Donald Baumgart was going to beat him out for a part in a new comedy for which both had read a second time that afternoon. "Jesus Christ," he said, "what kind of a name is Donald Baumgart?" His own name, before he changed it, had been Sherman Peden. Rosemary and Terry picked up their laundry at 8 o'clock, and Terry came in with Rosemary to meet Guy and see the apartment. She blushed and was flustered by Guy, which spurred him to flowery compliments and the bringing of ashtrays and the striking of matches. Terry had never seen the apartment before. Mrs. Gardenia and the Castavets had had a falling out shortly after her arrival, and soon afterwards Mrs. Gardenia had gone into the coma from which she had never emerged.
"It's a lovely apartment," Terry said.
"It will be," Rosemary said. "We're not even halfway furnished yet."
"I've got it,"
Guy cried with a hand clap. He pointed triumphantly at Terry.
"Anna Maria Albagetti."